So I basically have this theory about Half-Life, which I'm not really necessarily saying is true. It's just more of a fun theory. And, I mean, it's possible it's true, but it would be very realistic. So, in the Half-Life 2 beta, the Combine were much more oppressive, and they were stealing resources from Earth. And it was kind of obvious, like, they were enslaving humanity, because they were making children work in factories and stuff like that. And they were stealing the water from the oceans so that the water level was going down. But in the actual retail Half-Life 2 game, I think that the Combine are not actually doing what people think that they're doing. People seem to think that they're enslaving humanity. I don't think that they're actually trying to do that. And I can try to explain this. I mean, they kind of are, but it's not because that was their intention at first. So, I think that, well, actually, so there's a cut line from the Nihilanth at the end of Half-Life 1, which is the final boss. So the Nihilanth is in shackles, and he controls the Vortigaunts, and the Vortigaunts are also in shackles. So the idea is that at one point, like what people say anyway, which I don't remember ever finding any evidence for in the games. Maybe the Vortigaunt, that one secret Vortigaunt in Half-Life 2, I gotta figure out what he says actually, because that he might dismantle this whole theory because he has a ton of lines. But this idea is, according to like the YouTube videos I've heard, people say that the Combine basically had enslaved the Nihilanth boss, and then he escaped, and then like he escaped to Zen, and that was his realm, and then he was holding off the Combine. And then when Gordon killed him, that basically let the Combine get to Earth, and then they started invading. Here's the problem with that. I don't feel like there's actually any evidence that, okay, so this might be kind of hard to explain. I need to freshen up on some of the lore, but I'll try to avoid talking about Half-Life 1 and instead talk about Half-Life 2 here. Because the thing is, we don't know like what was going on with the Nihilanth and the Combine, is my view of things. And there was a cut line by the boss where he said, "They're slaves, we are their slaves." But the thing is, he doesn't actually say that in the game. So it's hard to say. I do believe. I guess I can't tell if the Combine actually enslaved the Vortigaunts or not. That Vortigaunt in the sewer must say something that gives that away. That must be true. Because where did people get that idea from? Anyway, that actually my whole theory might be dismantled. I'll get into the theory anyway. So the theory was basically that we don't have any evidence that the Combine were actually trying to enslave humanity, and they might have thought that Gordon's assault and the other HEV suit wearing characters that you can find dead in Zen, they might have thought that the assault on Zen was like this violent attack for no good reason. And then whether or not they controlled Zen or not, the Combine, they then proceeded to invade Earth after the Resonance Cascade. But the problem is, it kind of seems like, if you look at it from a certain perspective, that the Combine were trying to just wipe out humanity before Dr. Breen stepped in. And that's basically like what is alluded to. Like Dr. Breen, when he's being defeated, he says, "You need me." What I think basically could have happened is that the Combine thought that the assault on Zen was humanity trying to conquer this other world. And so the Combine saw humanity as a threat, then proceeded to attack Earth with the intention of destroying humanity until Dr. Breen negotiated for humanity's survival. Because here's the thing. If the Combine was trying to enslave humanity in the first place, like if that was their original intention, then why would Dr. Breen have to negotiate for humanity's survival? What exactly did he do? We don't really know what he said, what the conversation was, but he communicated with them, and it basically got the 7-hour war to stop, and then he was put in charge. So what maybe happened is the Combine actually thought that humanity was a threat, so they attacked Earth and with the intention to destroy it because they thought that humans were bad. And then when they figured out that, okay, maybe we can actually coexist with humanity. The interesting thing is that you don't know this from the games. Maybe like it should be kind of obvious though, is that when the 7-hour war happened, it wasn't like Metro Police and Combine humanoid soldiers that were fighting humanity. It was like other creatures that were part of the Combine. But the thing is, you don't see like any of that original army in the game except for like, you know, Striders and Hunters and things like that. But throughout basically all of Half-Life 2, you're fighting human soldiers that have just chosen to join the Combine. And so from a certain point of view, you might see it as the Combine basically just left humans in charge of themselves. They basically put Dr. Breen in charge, and they're like, okay, you manage this stuff, and we'll give you this technology, and whoever joins us, you know, like, well, then they join us or whatever. And there's this whole narrative that the Combine are oppressive and they're bad. But it might just be a case of crappy management, because the thing is like all of the evil stuff that the Combine does after the 7-hour war, like the stuff that you see in the games where citizens are being oppressed, all of that stuff happens by the hands of the human soldiers that like turned to the Combine. Like, it's just humans doing this to other human beings. And I understand that something has changed in the brains. Well, we don't really know that. I guess that's just theory. We don't really know how much has changed in the brains of the Combine soldiers, like how human they still are. But all that oppression, it's just the humans that were put in charge of this small planet that might be insignificant to the larger Combine Empire. And you're not actually fighting the Combine at all, like basically at all, in the games, because the only like really intelligent species that you're fighting, aside from like 2 advisors that are kind of watching over things, is human beings that have been transformed. So basically the way that I'm thinking of this is like, think about the Roman Empire or something, and how they went and conquered like all these different places. Or like how Alexander the Great, I don't even know, maybe was he Roman? I'm not like up on my history. But the point is, the Combine is a vast empire. And when you have an empire that's big enough, or like a business even, you have to put people in charge of certain areas. And some people are going to be better at managing things in certain areas than other people. And some people are going to abuse their power and be evil in their positions of authority. So my whole theory is that the Combine may not necessarily be evil, but Dr. Breen and, you know, like these advisors that were put onto Earth, they were assigned to Earth. Like the part of the Combine that was assigned to Earth, they are oppressive, but maybe not the whole of the Combine. Like, we don't really know that because through most of the games, you're just fighting other human beings. Or most of Half-Life 2 anyway. So it's kind of hard to explain this theory if you're not thinking realistically. And again, I'm not saying this is a true theory or anything. I'm just saying, like, a lot of the things, like the idea of the ocean being drained in Half-Life 2 is, like, it's just not true in the retail game anymore. There's no evidence for it. Because if you look at pictures of low tides compared to high tides, like on Google Images, you will see distances in water height that is just like what you see in the Half-Life 2 coast levels. The water, like, tides just do that. They go up like dozens of feet and go down dozens of feet. The Half-Life 2 coast areas could just be low tide. There's no evidence that the Combine is draining the oceans, and why would they do that anyway? What else? The Combine turned off humanity's reproduction because they were afraid of humanity. And I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it may or may not actually be true. We don't really know whether or not they would turn on the suppression field again. We think that, like, in the games, like, most people would think, the Combine are just trying to basically exterminate humanity by not allowing them to breed. But the thing is that they could have destroyed humanity already if they wanted to. Like, they won the 7-hour war. It was 7 hours. They conquered Earth. What they're doing is they're trying to integrate humanity into the Combine. That's what they do. That's why they're called the Combine, because they combine, like, other species into their empire. And the interesting thing is all of Earth is basically being governed by Earthlings, humans, who have just, like, transformed their bodies. Like, what is that called? Like, I don't know what that concept is called. I keep saying transformed, like transhumanism, right? Like, they've gone beyond, and they've like upgraded and downgraded in maybe some senses. But the idea is that they've, like, biomechanically whatever changed their bodies. And now it's literally just humans in charge, though. So you can't blame, like, the Combine, the other species, for the oppression that's happening entirely, because it's humans that are doing it. And, like, it's humans that they put in charge. And the Combine might have thought that's the most fair way to do it to the humans, is to have other humans rule over them. Like, and if you think about it, that is extremely fair. It just didn't turn out. At least it didn't turn out for people of, like, City 17. But we don't even know what really is going on with the rest of the world. And we don't even know how destructive the Resonance Cascade was, because, like, when Dr. Breen says it's safer here in City 17, he is not lying. Like, being outside in the wild, you're going to get killed by antlions or headcrabs or something. So it kind of makes sense that they're kind of, like, herding humanity into the cities where they can protect them, and obviously oppress them. But to, like, what degree are they actually oppressing humanity? Like, what are they doing? Because it seems like, aside from the suppression field, it's business as usual. Like, what is actually even going on? I don't even know. Because if you really pay attention, like, I noticed just walking around in Half-Life 2, things are pretty normal. Like, aside from the rebellion stirring things up, and I'm not saying that they don't have cause to do that, if their oppressors are needlessly oppressive. I'm not trying to paint the Combine as good guys, because they're not. But I think that they might be misunderstood and not as obviously blackly evil as the game's narrative leads the player to think. I think it's just an empire, and I think that empires conquer other places, and some leaders of sections of the empire are evil and oppressive. And it just happens to be the case that Earth is not being managed well. And it's not being managed fairly. I mean, in a way it is. Like I said, I think it's a really good point that humanity is actually ruling itself. It's just kind of underneath the Combine. Like, it's really interesting that the bad guys are just other humans in Half-Life 2. Like, very interesting. You don't even really know what the real Combine looks like, because they just left humanity alone after they put them in charge, and turned off the suppression field. But if you pay attention to things, like, I saw, like, there's beer bottles and Chinese takeout. Okay, big deal. What does that mean, though? It means that people are still manufacturing, like, beer bottles, and they're still making beer. And there's still Chinese restaurants running in Half-Life 2. Because otherwise, why is there Chinese takeout at rebel bases and in apartments? Explain that one to me. Like, why? Like, the restaurants are still running. So, like, how bad is it really? Like, yeah, you've got to wear those clothes, and now you're numbered like cattle, and the suppression field is on. But the people, your abusers are other human beings. I just can't get over that. You don't know what the actual Combine is like. You don't really know what their motives are. Maybe they're trying to, from their perspective, humanity is like a bad apple, and they're trying to fix humanity, and they're giving them this chance. Maybe everything that Dr. Breen says is actually true. It's just that Dr. Breen, his vibe is off, and, you know, he's not a good person. But maybe the things he says are true. Maybe he really is, like, humanity's hope, and humanity does need him, and the things that the Combine are promising him, maybe that's actually true. Because maybe the Combine thought that humanity was evil, and they needed to basically be wrangled down, and fixed, and, like, it's kind of interesting, because humanity, from a certain perspective, humanity invades Zen, kills the boss of Zen, and a bunch of Vortigaunts. Humanity looks very dangerous. Oh, you know, at the end of Half-Life 1, actually, it wasn't even just Gordon. It was like entire human armies that went into Zen. Because you can see at the end of the game, the G-Man shows you a scene with a Zen skybox where there's dead soldiers and, like, a blown up tank. So, like, the military invaded Zen. Think about that. Like, humanity went with an army into Zen, and then I guess maybe Zen like retaliated, and that's what Half-Life 2 is. And that's the 7-hour war in Half-Life 2. So maybe the rebels don't really understand the Combine's perspective, because it's like they don't talk to them. And I'm not saying that the Combine are good. It's just kind of more of like a gray area of what's going on, and things are complicated because there's so many different actors with their own motivations, you know? But the fact that we see... So, like, look at this. So, like, in Half-Life 1, you know, the Vortigaunts' first impression of humanity was Gordon killing them. But by Half-Life 2, they had gotten a better picture of humanity, and then they were allied with them. Or, you know, in Half-Life 1, it's like, you thought the Vortigaunts were bad, but it turns out that they weren't. They were just enslaved. So the thing is you just didn't have the right idea of what was going on. And I think that people don't have the right idea of what's going on in Half-Life 2 either. I think that people think that the Combine is wholly evil and oppressive and, like, destructive, and I just don't think that's true. I think that they retaliated and then saw, like, they were going to destroy humanity, and then they were negotiated with by Dr. Breen, and then they left humanity alone mostly. But they put some advisors in charge to, like, advise Dr. Breen on running things, and they also so like he's who's setting the rules? Because you got to think, like, Alex says that people that don't fit into what the Combine wants get turned into stalkers. But what rules did they break exactly? That's what I want to know. The game never really makes it clear, like, what did the people that were turned into stalkers do? Because for all we know, like, Alex doesn't really know why that happens, and she just believes that the Combine are evil, and that's just what she says. Like, she just thinks it's innocent people being turned into stalkers. We don't necessarily know that that's true. Those could be, like, the worst of humanity, like violent criminal, like murderer people, that the Combine are like, okay, we're going to take these people, we're going to make them into stalkers. Like, if you do this, like, break this rule or whatever, then this happens to you. And from the Combine's perspective, when they take a rebel that is, like, rebelling and killing people, then it makes sense for them to turn somebody into a stalker instead of, like, have that person exist as a rebel. And again, I'm not saying it's right, but the advisors, there's only a few of them overseeing all of Earth. You don't know what all the advisors are like, because there's some bad humans and there's some good humans, and there might be good advisors. There might be good Combine. In fact, it might be like a generally good empire. It just might be that the people in charge, the aliens in charge of Earth, are bad, and they're oppressive. And the human beings, the transhumans that are Combine soldiers, they're bad, and they're oppressive. Probably because it fits into with Dr. Breen's character, and he's more of a selfish person, but that doesn't mean that he's not necessarily right, and that doesn't mean that things that he says in his speeches are lies. Like, is it possible the things he says in his speeches are actually true? I just think it's an interesting theory of basically this idea that the Combine isn't actually evil. They're just misunderstood and kind of in a gray area. Kind of like, like Gordon killed all those Vortigaunts. And those Vortigaunts killed all those people. But we know by Half-Life 2 that, neither of them is bad. Well, then why were they killing each other? Well, it was because of their circumstances and because of their point of view. Like, the Vortigaunts were enslaved, and they were basically being forced to fight humans. And then, well, the humans, they obviously don't want to be killed, so they're fighting the Vortigaunts back. So they're enemies, but that doesn't make them bad, right? And I just think that there's something similar going on here with the Combine, where they're not wholly bad, but the actions that they feel they're being forced to take are bad. And I guess that's it. I originally had like a way longer recording of this theory that went on for like 50 minutes. So I'm glad I could get this talk about Half-Life 2. I don't know how discernible this is or how comprehensible this is. But yeah, I guess I'm done for now. I'm going to save this recording before like it corrupts or something.